Hello and welcome to the Warp World Tech Talk on Turnip Exchange.
Hi.
Oh man, it's
Hello,
a big
Moni
one.
and Ross.
Big
This
one.
this is a big one. It's our 1 year project.
Gosh,
It was a year ago.
awesome.
But yeah, as always, I am Jakku. Joined today is Ross, also known as Chudbreeder, and then
Mhm.
we got Moni or Monica, known as Moni Streams.
Hello.
And yeah, as mentioned, we're doing a talk about our website Turnip Exchange. For those that don't know, Turnip Exchange is the premier website for exchanging your turnips on Animal Crossing. Because don't try to exchange real turnips; it will not. You'll be disappointed. Yeah,
We
you try
tried to
to
go
You don't
think
that
even
like
know what
we
to
tried to go
do.
that route first. That's a little known fact about this. Didn't have anything to do with Animal Crossing when we first talked about it. We were really just trying to help out the turnip people, and Animal Crossing came out. I'm a day
yeah.
late
So
for this. I'm a day late for this. We should have done this talk yesterday.
we should have done this yesterday. You're right. It's still April 1st somewhere.
Mm,
No, it's not.
I don't think so.
But yeah, as no,
Yeah, it's not.
as always, we have some information about what this tech talk is. We're gonna get to introductions. That was a very informal one. We'll go over what tech talk is, what Turnip Exchange is, the challenges we faced, how we overcame those challenges. This one's new. We're gonna have a little bit of story time. There's a missing section as well, where we're gonna go over the
Ooh.
marketing aspect and whatnot, and that's gonna be ran by Moni. Then we're going to talk about our technologies, and then, as always, question time. Um, so introductions, super easy. Again, I'm Jakku, CEO of Warp World, lead developer of Turnip Exchange. Uh, my fun fact this time is that I once flew to Hong Kong on an 8-hour notice, spent the day there, and flew back. Oh wait, no, that's the old one. I once ate Olive Garden for 7 weeks straight with Olive Garden Pasta Pass, which cost Olive Garden over $10,000 worth of pasta, and it only cost me $300. I fun fact on top of the fun fact, I lost weight somehow. Ross?
Oh, hold on. I was just told that I left multi-queue up in the corner of the screen, so
Oh,
2 times in a row that we did this. 2 times in a row. So I'm fixing it right
all right.
now. This is how we do it live. This is how we do it.
Yep.
We're getting it cleaned up. We're good. All right. So that's
Well,
me. I'm good.
yep.
I'm good. We're fixed. We're fixed. That's me. I've been a web developer since the late 90s. Super old dude. I help. I'm the architect for EXTJS, which is a big enterprise JavaScript framework. We've won some Emmys. Actually, I think everyone here has won an Emmy. This is a Emmy award-winning
Lined
screen
up.
that
Tech
you're all
Talk.
looking at right now.
Wow.
I joined Warp World super early. Started with Maker's Mario, working on the API there, and got pulled in and been here ever since. I worked on all the front end for Turnip Exchange, which we'll talk about today. And oddly enough, yeah, I didn't eat anything green except for pickles until I was like halfway through high school. So that's everything you need to know about me.
I have a friend that still refuses to eat anything green, and
Huh.
they are in their 30s.
So what if it's green naturally, but then you change it? Do you think they would eat it? Like if you food colored
No,
it?
they're completely against vegetables in general.
Oh,
Like
that'd
their
be
their
rough.
diet consists of meat and cheese, and I don't know how they haven't died yet.
They're getting there.
Yeah.
They'll be there. All right.
Speaking of getting there, we got Moni.
Hi, everyone. This is my first tech talk. I'm excited. But yeah, I'm Moni, or Monica. That's my real name, if that wasn't obvious. But yeah, I have a master's in social media communications. Yes, those exist. And yes, they're hard to get. I joined Warp World in 2018 at about the time that Warp World acquired Bid Races and was about to get into the crowd control adventure just around that time. And I lead the Warp World marketing team in all fronts, everything that has to do with social media, community, content, PR, influencers, brands, and charities. I helped grow Warp World social media 35x. So we grew from like 400 to like over like
It was one
15,000 in like 2 years.
user, and we got to 35 users. Still 35
Wow.
countries.
That's pretty rude, but yeah, but with no with no paid investment, so everything was organic and community marketing. And then, if you didn't know, I also stream on Twitch. I spend too much time playing Super Mario World and The Sims. Actually, right now it's more The
At the
Sims
same
than Super
time.
Mario World. Yeah, at the same time. And
Yeah.
a fun fact about me is that I know every single lyric of the musical Hamilton. If you've ever heard of it, it's great.
Yeah.
I may have heard of it.
If you've ever heard of it, it's this little thing that
It's a little
happens.
thing.
Little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe like 20 people have seen it. All right. So
20
what
times,
is Tech Talk?
20x increase.
20 times, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it 20 times, but as always, Tech Talk is a bi-weekly show where we do a little bit of a deep dive into Warp World and the services that we offer. This week is around Turnip Exchange. So what we'll go over is, what the service is, the philosophy of the service, our goals, the problems it may solve, challenges we faced, how we accomplished it, any new features or ideas we might have for the service, a bit of a technical deep dive, and as always, general Q&A. And again, you can always ask questions by !ask in the chat. And so obviously, the next question is, what is Turnip Exchange? And so Turnip Exchange, we got some good slides here. It's a free queuing service for Animal Crossing New Horizons on the Nintendo Switch. We base some of our technology from our multi-queue service on it to help with the initial design and build of it. It's an easy to set up and use site for both a host and visitor. It also has become a community for all Animal Crossing players, and it allows you to filter island listings so that players and people can find what they want easily without lots of trial and error. Um, it's interesting because when we first launched Turnip Exchange, it was literally just 4 turnips, and we're getting to more of this stuff later on. But like it was just the goal was turnips, and it's evolved a lot since then, in ways we didn't expect and would not have anticipated. So it's really exciting to see a project grow outside of the areas you thought was your focus. As always, our goals and philosophies on this service, very simple. Keep it simple. Keep privacy levels, good for all users. Keep it free, or for the majority of users, and keep the focus on solving one big problem. Talking about the privacy, kid friendly. We at Warp World are very, I guess, not. We're concerned about privacy very much. It's something that is very near and dear to me and many of our team members. We like to think that if we're going to send you something, it's something that you want. If we're keeping something, it's something because we need to keep it. And given the world today, with how companies retain data and share data and all that stuff, I feel like too many of them just take as much data as they can because they can. And we really like to think about what we need to make a service work. Being that the site is around the game Animal Crossing, which is generally more of a considered a children's game, we want to make sure that the privacy settings and the site itself are kid friendly. And so we don't want to capture information that could be for children and things like that. It was one of the key details that me and Ross went over when we were first building out the service.
Yeah, definitely. We knew it'd be a lot different crowd than usual. Much different crowd.
Yeah, and that crowd also impacted like not only this, but like how we talked about our services and like our tones around stuff. Everything had to change for it to be like a younger audience in general.
Oh boy. Well,
there goes that. Now we know. Yeah. So it was an interesting, all of our previous services were very much around Twitch, and this was the first like disconnected service from Twitch where it was like its own thing. And we still wanted to retain a lot of that those core values that we have. But as always, this site was created because of a problem. The very original problem that created this idea of Turnip Exchange was the first Monday, March 23rd, 2020. That's what we call it, the first Monday. We saw we saw how bad the actual online queuing for the game was. Myself specifically, I was trying to sell my turnips that I had bought on the previous Sunday on March 22nd, and I was on Twitter and I found a Dota code and I was trying to join this island, and I tried joining for 45 minutes, all while being frustrated that either I would get the code and it would connect and I disconnect, or it would be like interference, and it was just I'm like, there's got to be a better way. Um, so so we are always looking at problems that we ourselves face when we play games and stuff, and this was no different. I saw a problem and I'm like, somebody should build a queue system, and I brought it up to our team on that Tuesday meeting. Um, and it was really fun. We're getting into that in story time, I think. But the issues that came with that whole online queuing. Was long load times. Nintendo is notorious for just slow menuing and long load times because they want to make sure that they're saving the game and all this stuff. But like they almost they almost go too much on it. So whenever you had an error, like it would take like literally a minute or two to go back to try again. People posting invalid Dota codes on Twitter was a problem. Um, them lying about their turnip prices was a problem. Uh, Random disconnects, even when you did finally get into the island, you would absolutely have a time where like you would get disconnected because somebody left the wrong way of all things. Like you can leave two ways in Animal Crossing, and one of them's the wrong way apparently. And while there were existing solutions out there for finding and selling turnips, they were very much a hassle. I feel like for both the host of the island or the world, depending on the game, and the visitors. You know, the biggest competitor and slash the original solution that I myself used way back on the DS days was the subreddit, the turnip subreddit for Animal Crossing, and the rules of that was that the host would post a listing like, "Hey, my island's selling, buying turnips for 500 bells." Um, you know, post down below, and I will DM you. And so the host is already doing a nice thing. They're already like opening up their island or game to these visitors. But now they have to go through and DM each user a code one by one as a slot becomes available. And I just don't think that was really like good. Like for the time it made
Yeah.
sense.
I think the original intent was just, I guess maybe they just didn't think how big that this feature could be. They were maybe just like, oh, you'd invite your friends and they'd come check
Mhm.
out your island or something. They didn't realize like this is a whole multiplayer ecosystem that they could have. Like there's a massive thing, and that's just not scalable. I mean, there's just that system that you've just presented is not useful and for
No.
either side, because the other side is
Right.
looking for something usually, unless they're your friends just coming to check out your island for fun. You're trying to find something specific, and that's, yeah, that I could just imagine that's like the worst thing in the world, just sit there for 4 or 6 hours trying to forcibly reconnect your way into somebody's island to find out it's not even what you wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
was
And
about to
just
say. Like that, I think they didn't even think about this in the way that their like internet infrastructure is just so bad. And like if you were going to have like more than 5 or 6 users in another island, that everything would break.
yeah. Yeah, so it was definitely like this whole flying to an island is from the original DS Animal Crossing days. They weren't islands then, but same concept. You were visiting the town, and at least now you can have 7 people join online, where before it was limited to 4 total, so 3 people could join. And like, yeah, the internet is, there's obviously game servers and things out there that can support 50 to 100 to 1,000 players at a time, and not talking about MMOs because that's crazy, but like Nintendo really hasn't caught up to that whole idea yet, and obviously they didn't know about this either. But the pandemic really, really helped people kind of like find a way to meet, and so many people picked up this game to have this online entertainment and this way to communicate with players. And so like people were always looking for ways to join islands and stuff. And I don't think Nintendo could have seen a way to fix that prior to this. And like it's just something they got to think about going in the future. Like their current system does not work. It does not scale.
Yeah, I would agree. I would also agree that Animal Crossing is definitely a pandemic success. It's like one of those
Mhm.
games that like shined in this era of being just like such a nice casual game you can play in your downtime. Like it was, I don't know. If there was a lucky bystander of this disaster of a virus thing, like Animal Crossing definitely was there to help save people's sanity, I think.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as you introduce a multiplayer thing, we've seen that in a bunch of things. Among Us, Fall Guys, like these games that are fun, but like in this situation, anything multiplayer where you can get in with your friends and do something just exaggerates. It just explodes because people are super bored and we don't get to go talk to each other in person, and it's a fun way to play with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, no problem can just be solved without a few challenges. And this was no different. So some of the challenges we faced, we were able to get the site out fast, but we also got really popular, really really fast, more popular than we've ever been on any of our services. Like we're talking millions of users in the first weeks of the site launching. Um, we were going through constant changes of the site, um, back end, front end changes, and so pushing those updates to millions of users live. Bots, this is always a concern that people have, and like security is something that we also like to take seriously at Warp World, and that whole I can't believe I just said those words. When, anytime a company says we take security seriously, security people like roll their eyes. So me saying it right now is kind of funny. But we had bot protection in place from the start, and we have different bot protection in place as we do now. And we can talk about that during the tech side. Infrastructure talk costs skyrocketed. Moderation was something we did not anticipate needing at first. Um, I think I remember telling Ross, I'm like, oh, it's Animal Crossing. These people are very much
Everyone's super chill.
happy-go-lucky
Yeah.
people, chill.
Yeah.
Um, but it became really clear quickly that we needed a moderation
Yeah.
team, and we have a really good moderation team right now. Some of them have been with us for almost a full year at this point, and then
It's crazy.
so shout outs to them. Early testing, initial release. Again, we got popular really fast, and so our testing was like almost non-existent at that point. We were doing like live testing almost. Um, Me and Ross spent like 3 to 4 days of nonstop coding. We were on Discord calls for like 12 plus hours at a time. Uh, we were getting tons of feedback and suggestions from users from all sorts of avenues. Um, and then scammers, just like bots, scammers that were either putting fake prices or going to islands and not following the rules and stuff, and dealing with those. So a lot of the challenges were different challenges than what we've ever faced before, which is fun because we at Warp World like to solve problems, and we like like we like new challenges. So it was really interesting to see these challenges, and how we overcame those is a whole other story. And actually, the next slide. So, um, so
Okay.
infrastructure changes. You know, it, that was the big
Amazing
one.
segue.
It's I'm the best at segues. It changed the way we sent socket message. So Turnip Exchange is a real time communication platform where like you sit on the page. There's no refreshing the page. It does it all through messaging in the back end. We were able to the way we first implemented the messaging was not necessarily the best, and so we were able to change the way our socket messages were sent, which not only decreased the response time it took, but it also helped decrease the costs quite a bit. um, Patreon pledging. We had links for the Patreon at the bottom of the site. There was no additional perks for people pledging on Turnip Exchange at first. And the amount like that in itself is something that's interesting, but like I get it. People want something for their money. And so what Patreon pledging allowed users to do was quite a few things, but one was it gave them the ability to always host, even if we're at server capacity. At some points we were at server capacity, and so um, we carved out a few extra spots for Patreon members, and those Patreon members helped pay for the server costs quite a bit. Um, and by putting those perks up at the top of the page and actually listing out what they are, we saw the Patreon grow quite a bit. And that just without the Patreon, the site would have probably been shut down after like 2 months. I don't think we would have saw a valuable reason for it, monetary wise, with the amount it was going to be costing us. Merchandise sales, those helped pay for some additional costs here and there, and we helped give our moderation team some gift cards and some merch and stuff like that. You know, we were really much in their debt for how much they helped us out, and like at the very least, we wanted to repay them in some way. And so we have moderation team from all over the world, and so gift cards and stuff made sense in that regard. Our Discord, our Discord blew up, and Moni will talk about this in the marketing side. But our Discord was very small, and it was very focused on our 3 core services, and it was very open, I would say, at that time. But we spent an entire evening, like 5 of us, going through the Discord and cleaning it up and changing the way it runs and functions, um, which it creates a little bit more friction, but it solves a lot of headaches that we were seeing. We had people coming from Turnip Exchange going into each of the channels for multi-queue, crowd control, one-up coin, and being like, how do I go to an island? And we're like, well, first of all, you go to the Turnip Discord area, and then you go there. But it was just like, we were solving those problems, which we shouldn't have to spend our time solving those. Um, I talked about mass deploys of to the site live, and so that helped. We used GitHub Actions with that, and Ross can talk about it in the tech area. And then, like, speaking about the amazing team helping us with moderation, we built admin tools for the site so that they could monitor the queues and the messages going through to users and stuff, and take action on rules that on islands that are breaking the rules, terms of service, and or just spamming messages and whatnot. So these were all things that we had to do on the fly, and were all things that we really didn't have to worry about in the past, which was really interesting to have to do really quickly.
Yeah, it was. I guess to that point, we usually, like you said, we usually interface with Twitch, right? There's usually like another kind of body that's protecting most of the stuff that we do, and in this case, we are just totally on our own, like everything on our own. And when we first made this, we were certainly not thinking we'll need some admin tools for people to be able to, vet all the islands we got. And yeah, to Jaku's point about like the popularity of this, I mean, I think everybody knows it got pretty popular, but the speed in which it got popular was the craziest part. It wasn't like a slow ramp. It was like overnight. It felt like we were going like sleepless nights programming it, and then we released it. We're like, cool, we can relax. And then it was like, no, you can't. Everybody's here. The party's happening right now. You gotta make it work, and get rid of all the shitty people and make sure no one's scamming all these people who are just trying to play this chill game. Yeah, completely different problems we've never had to deal with, and I'm it's awesome that we've had to deal with them now, because next time around it won't be like this.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, absolutely.
we really learned a lot, and it helped us grow not only on this side, but our marketing efforts were definitely doubled down on, and again, I'm amazing at this
So
marketing.
good.
Moni,
So
why
good.
don't you take it away?
All right. Yeah. So I think it was very important for us to chat a little bit about how Turnip Exchange impacted our marketing. As Ross mentioned, we were getting millions of users a day. Um, and we had focused for the last years in a very more retro Twitch attached community, so it was completely super different. So the first part that Turnip Exchange impacted us directly was our awareness as a company, and then as a product itself. We were getting millions of users a day. The coverage on earned media was natural, but like I said, like you can look at these headlines right here. We had amazing coverage from like Vice, ESPN, Polygon, Nintendo Live, Le Monde, which are incredible journals. Like I think from what I calculated, it's estimately around 250 million earned media impressions, but it was probably way more than we can ever count if we go to like social media and stuff. And this really ended up giving us more followers on our social media, more community members in our Discord, but also users and overall awareness on our team and products, which I think it is super, super important. And then if we go to the next slide, we talked about, our audience changed a lot with Turnip Exchange, so it impacted our marketing strategy. We used to have a strong tie to the Twitch community, specifically retro speedrunners and Mario streamers. This was super different to what we had known and grown our products on. So we had to adjust everything about our communication strategy to satisfy the users and the growth that we had seen. And in all fronts, in organic communications and also how we approach revenue. So some things that we had to do was change our company tone to become more personal, young, and appealing to the Animal Crossing community because it tends to be teenagers, younger people. We also have to change our posting cadence to focus on Sundays to bring back users to the platform. So with Turnip Exchange, what we noticed is that Sundays, of course, would be our biggest days, and then towards like the middle of the week, it would like go slowly down and then spike up again on Sundays. So something that I did was truly focus on having those engaging, reminding people to use Turnip Exchange posts on Sundays to even like get more awareness on those days that we were seeing those spikes come in. And then we of course have to amplify all of our marketing efforts and make them AC focused. We had For years we had focused a lot on like effect packs, and our influencers that we picked were more like speed running. So we shifted our merch strategy to become fully about Turnip Exchange. We got pieces out in like a week so that we could, you know, grow on that platform that was being built. And then like also collaborating with like other brands and other services. For example, when we did that collab event with Nukazon, which was another one of the big um, Animal Crossing tools, which also got more awareness on our product, and which was all just to bring more users into our platform. And then if we go into the last slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the growth and how, like Ross and Jakku were talking about, that we became popular very, very, very fast. So talking a little bit about the Patreon, as soon as we launched those reward tiers where people were able to get some perks on Turnip Exchange, we saw that 1.5 thousand USD to go all the way to 20,000 in like like a week. And it stayed around there. Maybe it grew like 15K and then it started going up again. But we were in a really good place where everything that was in the Patreon was covering all of the server costs, which was amazing. Of course, Turnip Exchange is a product that naturally people are making a lot of bells and they're millionaires and they don't need it anymore. So of course we've seen ad decay, but we're still lingering into higher numbers than when we started. And then, of course, our Discord, which is probably the one that saw the most growth out of all of our services, um, is we went from around 3,000 users to around 60,000 users in our server in the first 3 months, and we actually kept growing, and we are around 87,000 right now, which is insane. And it's also a platform that will, as we talk, we had to readjust it to make sure that we were doing the proper community management and satisfying the needs that everyone had of finding the right information, but while also keeping it clean to our other services, because our server is for everything that we have to offer. But using those announcement channels and using that stuff kind of helps us show the Turnip Exchange community that we also have other products. So it tends to be a good tool for like always on marketing. And then, well, our Twitter did see a lot of growth in the first 3 months. We gained around 7,000 followers, and we're still growing in there as well. But those were the three of our main channels that saw growth. Like I said, Turnip Exchange was crazy and had a direct impact on everything we did, and we had to change some stuff to support it. But yeah, that's kind of like the marketing side of Turnip Exchange. And I think doing those adjustments, especially for our tone and how we talked about Turnip Exchange and how we appeal to the Animal Crossing community, was key to keep those users around for as long as we could.
Yeah. And
Too
so
fast. Too fast
Storytime.
for you.
Yeah. Yep. You're too
Dude.
fast.
It's too
Um,
quick.
so one of the big things with Storytime that I wanted to get across is like, 2020. Nobody foresaw what was going to happen in 2020 with the pandemic, and uh, it was at that time that I was no longer employed with my main job. and I was focusing on Warp World full time at the end of March, and so I wasn't paying myself at that time because I'm like, I need to take a risk on Warp World to ensure that like this is the thing to do and grow. Because at the time I was working a full time job as like an acting CISO, which was very very demanding. But having the success of Turnip Exchange really allowed us to prove that when we focus on something, we really do have the potential to grow. And the Patreon helped us basically stay in business. I think crowd control would have been fine to help us out with that. And at the end of the day, crowd control did do a record number last year. Turnip Exchange just really helped like cement us as a success for 2020, and it also helped a lot of us survive 2020 by playing games with our friends remotely and doing this. We have our weekly podcast, and for the first like 6 weeks or so, we did our podcast in the Animal Crossing world, which was a lot of fun. And it was kind of a whole new thing, but Animal Crossing and Turnip Exchange really helped, I think, us survive, but it also helped a lot of other people kind of not lean in, but to take in the whole lockdown situation easier. It eased into it. Um, and so like that was really nice, I think. And I mentioned this slightly, but like when we first noticed this issue of exchanging bells and using Dota codes and Twitter and all that stuff, like I remember going to our team meeting that Tuesday and be like, "Hey, I want to build this site. Ross, I want you to help with the front end. Um, it will probably not make us any money," is what I remember saying. And I've never been more wrong in my life about something. So
Yep.
I remember perfectly that meeting that you just said it and no one like said anything. They were like, "Yeah, this is Jakku and another one of his random ideas he has on a Tuesday afternoon." And then a few days after, it was just insane, and everyone was like, "We have like so much stuff that we had to do."
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember that conversation very well. Just random DM after the thing, just be like, "You want to make this? Yeah, let's do it." And then we didn't sleep, and now we're here. I mean, it's just the way it
yeah.
went down. That's
We
why a lot
managed
of
to get
things
some sleep
happen with
eventually.
us.
It
But
is,
yeah,
but
well,
I think the knowledge that we've gained from this, because we were able to explore a lot of new technologies with this, and kind of like test things on here that we were thinking about using, and it gave us real world examples of stuff. Um, Turnip Exchange is definitely a site that we enjoy at this point. Like it's a great site. It's a great service that we built. And I'm sure if me and Ross had the time, uh, we probably have a dozen things we could go back from scratch and do, which would make it even better. And so I think we'd love to find a way to build out another TE type website that's more generic, like MultiQ, so that it could focus on other games, not just Animal Crossing, even. Um, and so like we're definitely thinking about some sort of site or service in the future that's like that. That's more. It's not directed towards a single game, but it's a platform for these types of services in a way.
yeah,
You
definitely.
guys have
I
any?
I think
Yeah,
I, yeah, I'm back and forth on it myself. There is a benefit to making yourself specific for something. I think we saw that with Turnip Exchange. There is something interesting about being for a community and then building
yeah,
around just a specific community. When you abstract things out so much, it's tough for everyone to feel like this is their space or that they're, you know, this is where they belong in there, I think. But
yeah,
um, as far as our Twitch offering goes, Twitch is such an abstract space. Multi-queue just makes a ton of sense there. You just never know what everyone's going to be playing, and some kind of combination there makes a ton of sense. And maybe in such a way where like we can make this service that can live in the abstract world, but then if we wanted to build out a Turnip Exchange like site, it could use the core of that other service, right? Like they're connected in a way, and
hmm
we don't have to rebuild everything from scratch. We could take what we learned into making kind of a like a connected infrastructure of
yeah.
these different services.
Yeah, I
That's
think
exactly where I'm at. Is like, God, Moni.
No, I was gonna say like going on from what Russ says about being for a specific community. I was gonna tell the story of how I actually had never played Animal Crossing ever, ever. I never liked it. I thought it was a hot take. I thought it was like a really boring game. Like I didn't like it. But when we saw that growth, especially me, that I was involved with like all of the communication strategy and stuff like that, I knew that it was a huge product that was being successful. And I had to like I forced myself to play it because like if I'm gonna be for this community, I need to understand like what are they having fun, where are the issues that they're seeing, how can we make this better, how can we communicate, how they talk, and stuff like that. So I think it was definitely worth the extra effort, like for me to actually get to know the community, get to know the game, so that I would understand where the people were coming from for the needs and things they wanted. I think that's a good story time. When I noticed that the growth was happening, I was like, I need to do this, or I won't be able to appeal to them in a more like social and community way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can definitely say that, I didn't play it all that much. Jakku really kind of drove the needs of the users, and the users actually drove a lot of that. We got a ton of feedback from people playing it
Mhm.
all the time, but without that, without like Jakku's knowledge of Animal Crossing from the past and the needs of what they needed, I don't think I don't think it would have happened. I just don't think it would have happened. Um, it was a fun game, and a lot of people in our community were like playing with it and playing around, but it just wasn't something that I didn't understand the problems that needed to be solved to help people. And
Right.
that was really the key
It's
piece. Was Jakku saw a problem, and then I knew the game was fun, and I have friends that are playing it. I'd love to get involved in it. I just didn't know the problems. As soon as a problem came up, I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's just
yeah.
solve it.
I
That's what we'd like to do.
I
So,
remember explaining to you like the whole aspect of how turnip exchanging works,
oh
and
my god,
just
it's like,
I've explained
why
that
do
to
I
so many
care if
people
Celeste
now.
is here? Because you were like trying to explain like the two different characters. I'm like, why do we need to filter this? Can't we just filter this? It's like, no, no, no. The players will get it if we say like whether Celeste is on the island or not. I'm just like, all right, dude, let's just do it.
Yeah,
Just worked.
but
Yeah, just
yeah,
trust in the Jakku sometimes.
trust in the Chaku. It's one of those things where like at the end of the day, we do need to trust each other in the expertise that we have. Um, if I had not played Animal Crossing ever before, there's no chance that we would have built this site, because like I would not have realized the problems that we were having. Like somebody could have came to us and be like, "Hey, there's a big problem with Animal Crossing, and there's this queuing." And like by the time we would have been able to dig into the problem, there would have been a lot more competitors and other services out there where we might have missed the boat, and I don't think we would have had that extra detail, because we were passionate about solving a problem that was personal to one of us. And that's how it's worked for all of our services, honestly.
Yeah.
The very
Anything
first
that's
version of
stuck.
the Q software, yeah,
Yeah.
anything that stuck was because it was something that we ourselves saw as a problem and wanted to solve. So yeah, it's just like everything else. Turnip Exchange was something like I I still remember the day me and Pooh got to use Turnip Exchange the first time. Um, the site had launched, and like I obviously was able to see all the Dota codes. I did not cheat, but I was able to see an island with like high bell numbers, and I sent myself and Pooh the island code that we have, and we joined the queue, and we were able to go and exchange it. And I'm like, this is it. We can shut the site down now. I solved it. No, but like
I got my
it was
bells.
that yeah, it was that day where it was like, this is what this experience should have been. It was like night and day, and it was only like a week apart. That was the craziest thing about it. Like that Monday, I was the previous Monday, I was like, this sucks. Somebody needs to do something. And then that next Monday, I'm like, hey, it works. It was so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, not only did we make something that was like useful for people, but the amount of people that came in, it was almost like a circular thing where it's like the site became more useful as more people joined it. Like that was, if
mhm.
there's only 10 islands on there, you know, we're we're not an exciting place to go figure stuff out. But the
No,
fact that it became kind of, the first place to go to and do this, it just um, became so much easier to do stuff like that, and everyone could become millionaires in a couple days.
Yeah.
Something that was
The,
super cool for me to see was, for example, that I remember that when we released the Patreon tiers, like people and their group of friends would like get together to get the money to pay for like a tier, so that all of them could use those codes and do the benefits. It was amazing. Like I had never seen people like actually enjoying so much a product that they were like, okay, as a group, let's get some money so we can pay for it, if that makes sense. It was amazing. I
Mhm.
think overall, seeing how the community really appreciated and thought it was an actual useful tool also kind of like makes us feel good. That's what we're here to do, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely weren't
Ross, you
set
kind of
up for
mentioned.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we definitely weren't set up for it. You know, we were experimenting with a bunch of tech at the time, kind of putting things out there that we wanted to play with, and I think that certainly bit us when we first launched. We had a lot invested in AWS tech that we wanted to play around with, and kind of found out the hard way that if you don't really know what you're doing there, you can get yourself a hefty bill in the mail. But we learned a ton about the technology there on that side, to try to streamline and not and make it like feasible. I mean, even
Yeah.
with all the Patreon in the world, we would have been in a huge amount of trouble if we kept doing it the way we were doing it. It was just not
Yeah.
cost effective.
And I wanted to talk like about the Patreon and the whole like 10 islands sort of thing. And like one thing that, we get a lot of feedback from our users on things, and sometimes it's repeated and stuff and whatnot. And it's never easy for them. Like you got to say no to some ideas that people give you, because like it might seem like a good idea on the surface, but at the end of the day, it's an interesting problem that you might create. And so like one of the biggest um piece of feedback we get from users is there's two. One is going to be about the Patreon though. It's they want to have a fast pass type service. They're like, hey, if I pledge, I should be able to skip the line, and that sounds like a great idea on the surface. But one of the issues that I see with doing that is that now makes it more of a hassle for the host, the creator of the island. They're doing all the work still. They hosted their island. They're making sure people leave at a timely manner. They're making sure nobody's like coming twice and stuff. And if all of a sudden like a name pops up and it like everyone moves down a slot because somebody paid, they're gonna deal with a whole sort of interesting problem there of their users complaining when they get in, like, hey, did you let somebody else in? And it's like, no, they were a Patreon member. And like I also don't want, like, it feels shady to me to be like, yeah, pay us Warp World extra money to skip the line, and it does nothing goes to the host. And so like that's a problem that I want to try to solve in general, is how do we pay these users, these hosts, oh, something? How do we give them a benefit for for doing what they're doing on our site? Because without them, the site wouldn't work. Without a host, like no one's going to anywhere, you know?
Yeah, we
So
struggle with that even on Twitch. You know, we struggle with that
yeah,
almost everywhere, and it's about value to the people that are bringing the service to us. And Jaku brought this up many times on the project. I brought that up a bunch of times. I was like, we should just let people pay to just hop in, and and it could be like a fee that the streamer sets, or the hoster sets, like all this kind of stuff. But yeah, you would keep kind of reminding me that none of this goes back to them, and they are doing all the work. So yeah, we just tried to stay clear of it. And oddly enough, actually, uh, when we started this, we didn't have any way of even knowing who was who. We started Turnip Exchange with the idea that we wouldn't have any auth. We wanted it to be
mhm,
so simple you didn't have any login. Like that was one of the things that we thought was a good idea when we first started. And then about halfway through, we're like, there is no way this is sustainable, because again, at the front, we weren't thinking we need to moderate it. We didn't think we needed any of that kind of stuff. And without some kind of authentication, there's just no way to vet out the people that are being horrible. And in the future, it would be great if we could find a way to actually like monetarily pay people for stuff. And I don't think that's far off. You look at things even like One
yeah,
Up Coin or things like that we are into, that allow us to um, actually give people like spendable income. So um, yeah, it was a very interesting problem there. Yeah, it
yeah.
was interesting.
And yeah, the the moderation stuff, and just the whole idea that uh, the authentication, the reason for like no authentication at first was like, one, we didn't think we needed it because we thought users were going to be very nice and friendly to each other. But two, it goes back to the whole privacy thing. Once we have accounts and stuff, there's a whole other set of rules we have to abide by. And so we didn't want to have to deal with that if we didn't have to. And so you can still continue to use the site as a host and or as a visitor without any authentication, but some islands will require like a Discord authentication. And that way, if that host is getting a lot of scammers or just bad users, they can only allow users that have signed in through Discord, and they can then ban them forever if they needed to. So it's still pretty limited, but I think it's much better than what it was, and it still solves that problem of privacy as much as we can without implementing more stuff. So yeah, it's interesting, but we got a lot
Yeah.
of stories. We could probably have an entire hour
Sure.
of discussion on stories. This is called a tech talk after all. So once again, I'm amazing. Technology used.
It's a little rough, a little
Out of
rougher than
10.
usual, but I
No,
feel like
no.
it was.
No, it was
Yeah,
great.
6 out of 10.
6 out. Okay, I'll take it. Ross, why don't you talk about the front end, since that's the first thing people see, and
Yeah,
this
that's
is the
true.
top of the slide.
Yeah, I guess that's a smart way to start. Yeah, the front end is all in Vue. We used Vue 3, which I think was relatively new for me at the time that we did Turnip Exchange, and now we haven't looked back. Vue is pretty much go-to for everything that we do across the board. We've been using Tailwind for quite a long time for our styling. And yeah, the move to the composition API has been like huge for us just in general in all the things that we do now that we start to be able to create these reusable chunks of code. It's kind of filtered into like everything else that we work on, and kind of the way that we structure our mindset on the back end of Warp World in general, and how we can reuse code and share things and try to make it easier to do things in the future. The site itself is relatively simple, single page app. Nothing too fancy. It has hooks or composition API, whatever you like to use, based WebSocket communication to a backend. We use AWS for some of that. We could talk about that when we get into the backend side, but there's AWS services that manage the scalable WebSockets, which was probably the toughest technology piece to deal with. We just hadn't dealt with scaling WebSockets before. Usually we have a single server dealing with our WebSockets, and it's difficult. It's a difficult problem. Luckily, AWS had recently solved it, and we were able to experiment with that. Sadly, that did end up costing a good amount of money, and we learned some lessons in that. S3, however, that was a fantastic way to go. That worked extremely well. The site is statically hosted right up on S3. There's nothing fancy going on there. We don't have any kind of server-side, Express servers or Nginx or anything like that. We just have an S3 host that hosts everything. As far as deployment, Jaco will probably get into a little of this in the GitHub Actions, but we implemented that in the middle of the project. We used just a simple release-based strategy, push our code up, and when we release it, like on GitHub, we actually like click the release, give it a new version. It's automatically deployed to S3. That was it. Yeah, I think that's about it from the front end side. I guess the CAPTCHA is kind of part of the front end and the back end. We talked about that a little bit. We went back and forth on different CAPTCHA technologies. We tried some different things. We were actually like concerned that Google would like boot us because we just had too many people, and like the rules around Google CAPTCHA, like number of requests is pretty wishy-washy. We couldn't really find an answer. Luckily, we didn't really have any trouble aside from the occasional human that doesn't look like a human, which we've dealt with. But yeah, I think that's about it from the front end piece.
Yeah, as the slide says, the backend's written in NodeJS. Originally, it was a single app that was really kind of just handling a lot of the stuff. Now I think it's one main app that's clustered into 4 clusters. So it's a little bit load balanced in that regard, and it has been handling things well. And there's 2 or 3 microservices that handle the queuing of the users themselves. So it will check for any stale users, and it will check to make sure that users are being moved to the next slot. And so those running on them on their own just works better in my experience. But that's all running on a dedicated system, not on Amazon. It's actually on, I believe, on DigitalOcean on this one. But we needed some persistence and some actual like service is just always running, and so that's what that's doing. It's going through the list, it's finding islands, it's curating things, it's checking for dead islands and things like that. Any islands that the host might have left alone, and doing cleanup. So pretty much all Node.js, MySQL database for that. It's something that we're all used to at Warp World. It's a common database that everyone's kind of familiar with. We've looked into Postgres and some Amazon services and Aurora and things like that. But at the end of the day, MySQL just kind of keeps coming back because it's like, well, this works for what we need right now, and we don't really need to change it. I think in the future, we're definitely going to be looking at other technologies, but for now, it continues to do what it needs to. Ross already kind of talked about this, but yeah, AWS WebSockets for communication with Lambda calls to trigger messages. That really helped reduce costs and just keep things pretty active. There is still occasional hiccups, mainly with mobile users. The users themselves will time out when they move from Safari to another app or Chrome to something else. And we had tried a lot of technologies, and this is more on the front end, honestly, to keep it alive a little bit. But we tried a lot of different ways to keep the socket from sleeping, and unfortunately, there was trade-offs to that.
Oh yeah, the battery stuff.
There was a few tricks that you had to do. Like if you embedded a small 1 pixel by 1 pixel video player,
That's right.
it would potentially keep your site from sleeping.
Yeah, I forgot
But
all about
then
that.
it would eat up bandwidth and CPU usage for Chromebook users. And yeah, it was crazy. There's I mean, we haven't looked at it much recently, so maybe there's a new solution, but as more and more communication gets passed between the browsers and servers, um, you know, browser developers are creating like they're blocking this sort of stuff because more times than not, that data is not something that should be persistent. You don't need to have a socket, but if you're in a queue system, it absolutely should be. So like, I don't know, there should be some sort of like system that you could prompt the user like, hey, do you want to have background connections? Yes, okay, but
Yeah. I
it
think
was
with
definitely something interesting.
Yeah, I think with all the stuff you've described so far, another reason we went with all of this is again the timing. Like this was a 2 or 3 day project for us that we were just,
Mm-hmm.
experimenting with. And this is all stuff we knew. The AWS WebSocket was actually like, do we do this now? Do we get into this? And it was really more of like let's try it in this experiment situation. Just to see how it goes. But if we could do it all over again, and I did have more time, I'd probably look at like mobile push notifications, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
could drop people off the socket completely and then push back out to them, and then they would reconnect. But at the time, we were just flying right then. There was no time to go look into some kind of new technology. We were just trying
Yeah.
to keep our weekend project afloat and make it work. But yeah, to be honest, there's probably 7 million ways we could have implemented the stuff we do, and this is just what we were comfortable with and what we could get something out that allowed people to do what they needed to do. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and again, it's one of those things that you don't know is a problem until you implement and test really, and
yeah.
you
Or
see
until
what
you have a
use cases
million
it works for.
users.
Right,
Yeah.
because that was the other thing is like sometimes the sockets just it was so many sockets, and not that Amazon couldn't keep up, but there was definitely issues with the Amazon scaling for a little bit there. Um, AWS, so GitHub Actions, Ross talked about that a little bit, but same thing with the code deploys. You know, when I have a release, I'm able to deploy. We actually have a dev environment too. Believe it or not, in the middle of this, we did end up getting it because we did start making some breaking changes that we needed to test, specifically with the CAPTCHA protection. Um, because we did switch a few different ways to do that. We used something called Casada at first, which seemed to work for a lot of users. And then we got the complaint that like that was the biggest thing I think with all of our solutions is we wanted to keep that out of sight for the user. We didn't want users to have to solve a CAPTCHA. We wanted it to be in browser and do that whole automated detection sort of thing. And so both Casada and Google CAPTCHA v3 allow for that. And so we would get DMs from users on our Twitter, on our emails, and all sorts of stuff saying like, "You need bot protection." It's like it has bot protection. Um, you just don't see it because we didn't want to have it in the forefront. So like that's another thing. Is like we try to make the site simple and easy and user friendly, and hide things from users. But at the same time, by doing that, users were upset that there was no bot protection, even though there was. So it's kind of an interesting like back and forth thing that we now will know in the future if we're going to have a site like this or something else. Like, do we put it in front of them? Do we let them
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Put the warning signs up. Put the little
But
something
the
up.
bot.
Yeah, but the bots.
The
And then
bots.
Cloudflare protection, we also had that. All of our sites are Cloudflare, but this was the first time we had to actually upgrade our Cloudflare account to meet some of the demands and needs. So we have a lot of stuff that's like watching for people trying to scrape the site, and blocking those sorts of things and keeping up on that sort of stuff. Because like at the end of the day, we don't want people scraping the site because that potentially can create bots. At the end of the day, and just makes it makes the usability for users that are actually on the site worse. Our APIs are not publicly, they're publicly open technically, but they're not. We didn't say, "Hey, here you go." It's just the way that the site's designed that the APIs could be exposed for users, but they're not exposed for developing reasons. They're exposed because that's how we developed it. So it can have the static sites on S3 and the backend. But it's interesting. Balance because you do want to encourage some development at the end of the day, but sometimes people take things a little too far with their development. So that's the tech side. You know, we're on to question time, and I see there's 3 questions, but really there are no questions. It like I'm not. I'll pop them up. Dream Attack says, "No question. Just an enormous thank you to Ross, Jakku, and all the team behind the scenes of TE at Warp World. I've made some amazing friends by stumbling upon star star star. I don't. I'm not sure what blocked that. Plus the Warp World Discord last year, and I've had a lot of appreciation for everything that went into this project. Heart. Thanks, Dream Attack. So Dreams Attack is actually one of our moderators. So thank you so much. We got another question from Rex Wrath that was like, as a web dev, I'm very curious to know what the back end and front end techs you used and how you handle continuous deployment and what the DevOps process looked like. But then they also asked, well, my question was answered. Well, um, so yeah, at the end of the day, it's
Perfect
that is what it is.
presentation. We answered every possible question, left no one with questions. I'm sure that was what it was.
Drinner though does in our chat. They didn't ask this, but they say pretty sure you can create private endpoints in your own VPC so you can have API available without being public.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can, but we don't develop like that.
Well, and the other
At
thing
the end of
is
the day, like it's
the front end has to make calls.
yeah,
Like the
it
front
has to
end
make a
has
call
to be
exactly.
public. There's nothing we can do about that. We definitely
Yeah,
can put some private things back in our own internal network, but
which we have.
yeah. And I think on some
Yeah,
level we also did lock some calls down to just our domain, like just our IP address from the website. I think we did some stuff
yeah.
like that at one point.
There's certain calls. A lot of the admin stuff is like that. Is the admin
Yeah.
stuff is very restricted and requires authentication.
Hmm.
But yeah, because the website itself is static and it's hitting these APIs, anyone sniffing the connections will be able to see those same exact connections. So there's no communication that you can't have between the website and a private VPC that would make the site also work then,
Nope.
because it'd have to be coming from their browser. So, oh, here we go. we got a real question
Got a real one.
from It's Corey.
I think we got two.
When making compromises around how users experience the site, what are you willing to compromise and what is non-negotiable? I.e., high CPU usage for Chromebook sounds like it would impact very few users. You're right. We did have a lot of users that didn't have that impact, but it also the other side effect is like it was happening to mobile users, and mobile users were complaining about their phones getting hot, and that was the whole point of that video player. Even though it was a one pixel by one pixel, it was still causing their video to get encoded. So while we're not meant for mobile, especially, or we didn't design it for mobile, we still didn't want mobile users to have a worse experience and have their battery drain and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, we just make sure that users don't. We tell them like you don't have to refresh, but try to stay active on it. That was probably the better compromise that we could come up with at the time. Now that we've had some time to think about it and whatnot, we probably could have come up with a better solution. But Warp World is very much a company that has to act fast on a lot of things. And so, like, once Turnip Exchange got to a point where it was stable and wasn't requiring a lot of dev work, we moved. Myself and Ross moved on to our other projects. Obviously, we still watch Turnip Exchange, and I still fix things as things come up. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's if users complain in our Discord about something, we're going to investigate. And that's what was happening when we tried all these other solutions, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I would also say that, Turnip Exchange was an experiment for us just as much as everybody else that's coming in for the first time. I have no doubt there won't be another I have no doubt there will be another site like it. We'll make something in down the road, and we'll take all the things we learned from this and push that forward into the user experience for that. And aside from like keeping the WebSockets open, we tried to keep the experience pretty similar between both. We wanted everybody to be able to do everything, whether you're on mobile or not. And yeah, I think the constant communication, the WebSocket, we've actually looked at other tech now. SSE has been a big tech that we've been researching lately. It's not even research; it's actually really old tech. And we found that that's a very, very useful push mechanism when we don't need to have the browser actually send stuff, single direction communication. Yeah. I don't know if I have a list of things I would say I'm willing to compromise. Like, I don't think I would be able to call that out right now, but I think each different thing has its moment, and you have to have a discussion about the pros and cons and who it's going to affect. Yeah, I definitely don't have a list. I will say one thing that's definitely non-negotiable is privacy and security. There was never a time that we were willing to give on any of that. That's probably the big non-negotiable.
Yep. Cheeseburger asks, has Warple been asked to create custom tools by others? Yes and no, I guess. I don't know if you mean by like other companies or individuals, but a little bit of yes to both, I suppose. We've been involved in different projects with individuals and companies since Turnip Exchange and prior to Turnip Exchange. 2020 was a big year for us with a few different contract work for a few different companies. Some of it you saw on Twitch, some of it didn't. But yeah, we've got some of that going on. Anything to add on that, Ross or Moni?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, nothing specific, but again, it's just like keeping ourselves learning and like keeping ourselves like up in the communities and like I don't know, not even just learning about like games and how to solve people's problems, but the tech and how to solve this quickly and like efficiently for people. It's helped us in like every single thing that we've done. Every time someone asks us to do a job or some work, like we're that much faster and better. We're that much more able to communicate with people in these different communities. Like we learn so much from every one of these. It's hard to say like whether any projects have been directly like related to Turnip Exchange, but everything since it has benefited from it.
That's true. And that's that answers this next question almost already. But after your experience with TE, how has that changed how you attack new projects, and has it inspired ideas for new projects? Absolutely, it's changed how we attack new projects, as Ross
Yeah.
just mentioned. Way to ask another question, Rexrath, that has already been answered.
Yeah. As far as inspired ideas for new projects, I don't think you're going to find a group of people that need more inspiration for ideas on new projects. We are buried in ideas, and we need to, yeah, definitely don't.
We have
Yeah.
too many ideas.
We got ideas. That's certainly not the problem. We don't have enough time in the world to make them all happen. And also, it's, to admit it, not all the ideas are good. You know, we gotta sift off the ones that are worth taking a time for. And or sometimes it's like 10 little ideas smush into something that's like, oh well, there you go, that solves a bunch of problems. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, to kind of answer this question and the previous question a little bit, is like there is a project that we are very excited about, hopefully announcing this month, that we were able to do because of some of the success of Turnip Exchange. And so uh, it's really exciting to see this coming out. We hope to announce something soon, but I can't get into the details yet. But when you see it, you know what it is. And, to ensure you see it, make sure you follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/warpworld.
Smooth.
And if you want to see it come out sooner, go over to the patreon.warp.world and pledge, because that probably helps. I don't know.
Well, I'm sold.
I'm sold.
It's good for me.
It's good.
Yeah.
I'm the best sales guy, let me tell you.
Good at segues.
No, I think that's,
might have to work on the sales part.
yeah. We don't have an ending slide, but this is the end, my friends. We have no more questions. Moni and Ross, thank you so much for joining today. This is our third tech talk, another one in the books. The next tech talk I'm super excited about. I know Cat Dev Games will be on. They are really excited to share some of the information. We don't know who the second person on will be, but it will be myself, Cat Dev Games, and at least one other person. And it's going to be around crowd control, and it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a long. I don't know if it's long, but it's going to be a big one. It's going to be exciting. We've been keeping the best for the last, I think.
It's got some
and
history.
once we are done with,
It's not last.
yeah. Well, no. So it's the last of their 4 core services. After that, we will be announcing what these tech talks will be diving into. But it's not going to change too much, but there will be a little bit of a change. But we wanted to get the first 4 tech talks done that go over what the services are, how they work, and all that sort of stuff, so that anyone that catches them in the future can go to these first to learn about them, and isn't lost about what the hell is crowd control. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye, everyone.